But China's recent devaluation of the yuan triggered reverberations across the global economy. Now, David Denoon, professor at New York University and head of the university's Center of U.S. China Relations, spoke with VOA business reporter Alexis Christoforous about how the devaluation is affecting Africa's currency and commodities markets.
The direct effect on Africa is going to be in consumer goods. It'll make Chinese consumer goods more attractive, so that Africans are more likely to buy those goods, whereas things that Africa is shipping to China will be more expensive, therefore the Chinese will probably buy less of them.
And what about demand for some of the African goods, like the precious metals, like oil? If demand from China really starts to wane, wouldn't that have a negative impact on the overall African economy?
Absolutely. Something like oil is determined in an international price. And those are bid in international markets. No individual African country can control those. But for precious metals, it depends who controls it, what percentage of the market they have, and so on. So those are less likely to be affected by a devaluation.
Mm-hmm. We've seen that some of the African currencies, like the rand and kwanza, have been affected. They've fallen sharply since the yuan was devalued. What is the relationship there between the yuan and these other currencies?
Well, the other currencies have to adapt if the country is directly competitive with China. Now, the real question is, to what extent are these countries exporting anything other than raw materials? If they're exporting raw materials, it's the general macroeconomic effect that counts. So as China's economy slows down, they buy fewer raw materials, they need less oil, and therefore there's less demand. But to the extent that these countries are actually producing manufactured goods that are competing with Chinese goods, then they're going to have a tougher time.
Some of the African nations have actually promoted the idea of the Chinese yuan as a reserve currency. Nigeria is one of the countries that's done this. But what does China really need to do to make their currency popular and to see more countries adopt their currency as a reserve currency?
Well, economics is about trade-offs, and the Chinese had to make a tough decision. They're more concerned about the domestic economy than they are about their international objectives. There's absolutely no question that you're right, that the Chinese wanted this and many other countries wanted the yuan to be more widely used. The problem is, now that they've devalued it, the people who are holding yuan are going to have something that's worth roughly 4% less than it was a week ago.
Right.
So if your currency fluctuates a lot, that makes people less likely to use it. Also, the Chinese have been negotiating with the International Monetary Fund to get the yuan included as one of the items in the special drawing right, which is a combination, like a basket of currencies.
Right.
So, and they're less likely to succeed at that now, because people are going to say, we can't be sure that the Chinese won't make very rapid adjustments in the currency.
And finally, what can countries like Africa do to sort of insulate themselves from the effects of this devalued yuan, if anything?
Okay, well, they need to continue to devalue essentially at the same rate that the Chinese are, so that their goods are still competitive in the Chinese market.
Well, thank you so much for your insights today, Professor Denoon of NYU.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Alexis Christoforous, VOA News for Africa 54, New York.